In the heart of ancient Europe, where history and legend blend into a rich tapestry, a hero emerges. His name... So, picture this, a guy with enough charisma to unite a bunch of tribes and enough guts to challenge the mighty Roman Empire. Yeah, that's our man. Who needs a crew when you're Faramund? This guy's got the confidence and the swagger to do this all on his own. So, subscribe and hit that bell icon. The Legend of Faramund starts now. Starting out with my education, I decided to go down martial only to find out that my perks had gone down overseer. So what I decided to do was go ahead and reset the perks, and then clicking on the chivalry focus, and then applying perks to both the strategist and gallantry, only to the gallantry with stalwart, leader, and chivalric dominance, and the rest of my perks to the strategist tree. Next on my list was getting married, as I didn't really have an heir and I needed me an absolute baddie to conquer the Roman Empire with, and her name was Salonina. She was a Britanno-Roman woman who believed in Sawir. I don't know how you pronounce that religion name, nor am I going to attempt it. But she had the genius trait, which obviously indicated that our children were going to be absolute geniuses when they were to be born. Hopefully.
So I went to hold my first court with my cousin Theodmar showing up, asking me to improve the taxation of the land. Of course, I would say yes to this proposition, because money is king. My second petition was a man named Aldrich who wanted to pledge his life for my protection. Our third and final petition was a man named Chieftain Filbert of Arnheim who wanted to pledge his allegiance to our kingdom, as he did believe in our vision of unifying the Franks. Bodyguard Marcoma had pulled me aside, explaining to me that he was under-equipped with a very short and blunt blade, and that most people in the army probably would too. So I decided to invest 50 gold into making our blades refined and much better. Now I decided to go ahead and reform our army, but not in the way that you think it is. I just added a bunch of war dogs. That's right, I like dogs, especially German Shepherds. So, I decided to go right ahead and start constructing some buildings such as palisades, war camps, and gathering halls, as my complete focus was going to be on our army. During a evening of reflection, I could have become a journaler or a poet, but I decided to become a poet because that's kind of cool. I knew that with my vision that I was an enemy of Rome, I decided to become an aggressive attacker to inflict 25% more casualty damage, obviously because I'll be commanding my armies. Unlocking the first Dynasty Legacy point, I would put it into the House of Warriors for the plus 15% Knight of Effectiveness bonus. The drums of war were finally calling, and Gaul was weakened, much significantly compared to us, as I was to initiate a grand raid. A great raid that would not only enrich us as the king, but enrich the people of the Salian Franks forever in history. As my grand raid had raged on in the middle of Gaul, a very unprecedented event had happened. My father Marcoma had finally died. As a couple of months had passed, I had gained the nickname of the Hammer, King Faramund the Hammer. With about 2 years of our grand raid raging across Gaul, we had managed to collect 2,800 gold coins and a huge amount of prestige towards our name. The grand raid had finally come to an end. After the raid, Aldrich, who had appeared to me in court to pledge his allegiance, had done significantly, not only protecting me, but for fighting for the future of the Frankish people. I had decided to finally make him a lord, granting him the holding of Brabant. As it turns out that after our raid on Gaul, it not had only weakened them economically, but it had also fractured their lands of Normandy and Brittany. And obviously, these lands were weakened and ripe for the taking. So obviously, you know what I was going to do. The first war that I would rage for would be for the Duchy of Beclica Secunda. The war had only lasted 14 months, since Beclica Secunda was a very new territory and didn't have an army to muster to defend itself. The takeover was swift and quick, with minimal casualties. Next was for the Battle of Normandy itself. Now, Normandy wasn't as weak as Beclica Secunda. Their army was much more refined, and luckily for us, it was half our size. The war had only raged for 6 months with the capture of the Duke of Normandy himself, and so the conflict would come to a very anticlimactic end. So after 5 years of several conquests, it was starting to look like our treasury was starting to get low after hiring many mercenaries to fight the war for for us. So it was basically tradition at this point to go for another grand raid on Gaul, because let's face it, this mod hates Gaul. And before you know it, I had a son, which I named him after my father, Makoma II. And as it turns out, during our raid, the Gothic invasion of Italia had begun, with the dude in prison. So I don't know what happened there, but you know what? Oh, dude. But eventually our grand raid on Gaul had come to an end, and now it was time for us to expand our borders once again towards Brittany, to controlling the English Channel. 13 months had gone by, and the conquest of Brittany was a complete success, with barely minimal casualties and Brittany's army being nowhere in sight. When we sieged the capital, we managed to capture the Duke himself, quickly and swiftly ending the war like nothing had happened. As time had passed on, we hadn't even unified a single piece of land of our Salian Frankish lands, except for the vassalization of Arnhem that happened about 8 to 10 years ago now. So, what would start would be the great conquest of our original homelands, the great Salian Frank vassal wars. One by one, each Salian king would fall under rule to our banner. With our armies dominating theirs, it would only soon be time for unification would be complete. As these wars were raging on, we were being raided by the Great Saxon Federation to our eastern border, as they were taking advantage of the chaos within these Salian wars. Our dukes and counts would come complaining to the council asking for protection. Obviously protection would have to be minimal, but within due time we will face the Saxon Confederation with an iron fist. And when that time came, not only were the lords of our realm angered, but also the peasants, as they wanted to join the armies and avenge their brothers and sisters from the Saxon raids, and a massive invasion of our Salian kingdom would be an invasion kingdom casus belli. As the invasion kicked off, we would use new tactics that we had learned from Britanno-Romans along our conquests for Normandy and Brittany. The invasion had only lasted 58 days until we had also captured the king himself of the Saxon Confederation. And to secure our eastern border even further, I decided to invade the parts of Jutland, Denmark, to protect ourselves from any further German raids. And with that being said, the Salian and Ripuarian tribes were united under one Frankish banner. As the Visigoths and the Burgundians coalesced into formidable kingdoms into the former Western Roman Empire, so too have we been able to establish a kingdom of our own, one that unites the Salian and Ripuarian Franks spread out across both banks of the River Rhine. From our seat of power along the Rhine, the new kingdom of the Franks shall see it grow and prosper, but only if our ruler and their successors can truly allow that to happen. Even with the unification of our kingdom and my name being known as King Faramund the Great, there was still one big problem that we had to tackle to truly be thriving and independent kingdom, and that would be our war of independence against the Western Roman Empire. Now at this point, the Western Roman Empire was nothing but a shell of its form itself, losing the parts of northern Italy to a Gothic invasion, and basically the entirety of southern Italy to the Eastern Roman Empire. Western Rome's holdings were only on parts of France and their remaining territories in Britannia. And with the Western Roman Empire in such a weak and crippled state, I will declare war for independence, separating those two territories once and for all. Sorry, Aurelius, Please forgive me, I'm so sorry. But our war for independence had raged on, about a year and a half of nothing but brutal fighting. Even with the Western Roman Empire in such a crippled state, they were still quite a formidable foe, losing many people within that war. But after a year and a half, the Salian Frankish independence dream had finally become a reality.